Sometimes, the strangest mysteries don't come from distant jungles, abandoned ruins, or classified government labs. Sometimes, they appear right above your head. That's exactly what happened to John, an ordinary homeowner preparing his house for winter. One moment, he was tightening a few roof tiles. The next, he was staring at something that made his stomach clench and his hands freeze on the ladder. Wedged between his wall and roof insulation was a bulbous, fleshy mass, something that looked alive, yet eerily still. At first glance, John thought it was a hornet's nest, but within days he'd discover a truth that was far stranger, far more dangerous than anything he could have imagined. And trust me, you're going to want to stick around for this one. It was early October, and John was doing what most careful homeowners do before winter: roof repairs. He lived in a modest, wood-paneled house at the edge of town. Winters here were long, brutal, and unforgiving, so every crack, every broken tile had to be patched before the snow came. John wasn't reckless. In fact, he was the cautious type. He'd once fallen from a ladder years ago while fixing a gutter, and ever since, he treated every climb with laser focus. But on this morning, something else was about to test that focus. He squinted toward the top corner of his attic overhang, and that's when he noticed it. A bulging, uneven object wedged in the seam where wall met insulation. Not just a gap, not just rot, something placed there, something foreign. His first thought was hornets. He'd seen nests before, papery, oval, menacing. This one looked similar in shape, but off somehow. Still, hornets were bad enough. He knew how aggressive they could be. If he got too close, one wrong move could send a swarm straight into his face, and 20 feet up on a ladder, a sting could be more than painful. It could be deadly. John fetched his tallest ladder and set it against the siding. His heartbeat was steady, but his hands were clammy. The first few rungs went easy. The higher he climbed, though, the heavier the silence became. Normally, hornets gave themselves away, buzzing, shifting, crawling across their nest. But this mass was dead quiet. At 15 feet, John froze, holding his breath. Nothing. No hum, no flicker of wings. By the time he reached the top, unease had rooted deep in his chest. Up close, the thing was bigger than he'd thought, the size of a duffel bag, heavy-looking with a rough surface patterned in strange indentations. It didn't look like it was spun from papery fibers. It looked woven, thick. Animal, not insect. John's knuckles whitened as he clutched the ladder. Every instinct screamed at him to back off. Instead, he forced a deep breath, steadied himself, and climbed down. Not today. Rushing headfirst into something unknown, that was a mistake he wasn't willing to repeat. From the ground, John kept watch. An hour passed, then another. Still, no hornets. No life at all. Maybe it's abandoned, he muttered, though the words didn't comfort him. Finally, his curiosity overpowered his caution. He climbed again, reached carefully for the mass, and tugged. To his surprise, it was heavy, dense. With a grunt, he pulled it free and carried it down, step by careful step. On his garden table, under full daylight, it looked even stranger. The outer shell was tough, fibrous, laced with what looked like bits of animal hair. It gave off a raw, earthy scent, sharp and organic. Hornets didn't build with fur. And this wasn't paper. It was hide-like, almost leather. John felt his throat tighten. What exactly was he holding? He called his friend Mark, a self-taught wildlife enthusiast who had an answer for everything from bird calls to animal tracks. When Mark arrived, his expression darkened almost immediately. "This isn't the work of hornets or wasps," he said flatly, running his fingers across the surface. "It's organic, yes, but insect-made? No chance." John swallowed hard. Then what is it? Mark hesitated before taking out a pocket knife. With a careful slice, the shell split open. Inside were tightly packed fibers, and something else. Clumps of fur. Brown, coarse, unmistakable. John's stomach dropped. Hornets didn't weave with fur. No insect did. Mark snapped photos and shared them with his online wildlife group. Replies flooded in, guesses about rodents, birds, even wild theories about abandoned beehives. None fit. By nightfall, John was more unsettled than ever. He had solved nothing. And that night, the real answers began to stir above his ceiling. John drifted into uneasy sleep, but at 2 a.m. a sound ripped him awake. Thud, thud, thud. The ceiling boards trembled. John sat up, heart hammering. Something was moving in the attic. He crept into the hallway, eyes fixed on the attic hatch. The moment he stepped beneath it, another sound. Heavy, deliberate footsteps. It wasn't rats. It wasn't hornets. Whatever it was aware of him. Then his phone rang, blaring in the silence. At the exact same moment, a guttural roar bellowed from the attic. Deep, primal. John stumbled back, slamming the hatch shut in panic. His shaking hand lifted the phone. It was Mark. "John," his voice was urgent. "That thing you found. It's not a nest." John's breath hitched. "Then what is it?" Mark hesitated, then said the words that froze him in place. "It's a food storage sack. Made by a brown bear." John's knees nearly buckled. A bear. In his attic. Mark explained quickly. In rare cases, bears preparing for hibernation gather food in makeshift caches. Sometimes, if they wander close to homes, they break in. That strange object? It wasn't a nest. It was the bear's stash. And John had unknowingly stolen it. Suddenly, the growls above his head made horrifying sense. "What do I do?" John whispered. "Get out. Call animal control. Do not go back in there." John bolted to his car, heart racing. He sat gripping the wheel, every muscle tense, imagining the bear crashing through the ceiling in rage. Mark's headlights pulled into the driveway moments later. Then a white van rolled up behind. Wildlife Rescue Unit. 2 officers stepped out, calm but brisk. One carried a tranquilizer rifle. The other, a net and heavy restraints. "You the homeowner?" one asked. John only managed a nod. "Stay back. We'll handle it." The officers entered with flashlights. John and Mark stayed outside, watching the beams sweep through the house windows. Then came the growl. Low, vibrating through the walls. The attic hatch creaked open. Light swept the dark. A pair of glowing eyes glared back. "Big one," an officer muttered. Hiss. The tranquilizer dart flew. The bear roared, rearing up so tall it nearly filled the cramped attic. Boards rattled. Dust rained down. For a moment, John thought the sedative hadn't worked. But then, slowly, the beast swayed. Growls weakened. Finally, it collapsed with a ground-shaking thud. The officers worked methodically, strapping its massive body, lowering it carefully from the hatch. John watched in awe. The creature was enormous, fur thick, claws glinting even in sedation. Relief washed over him only when they confirmed, "It's down." Safe. Outside, the bear was loaded into the wildlife van. The officer explained, "It'll be relocated to a sanctuary. Plenty of space, safe hibernation. It won't come back here." John exhaled so hard his knees nearly gave way. The nightmare was finally over. The van drove off into the night, taillights fading. Silence fell over the street. Mark clapped him on the shoulder. "Well, at least you don't have hornets." For the first time in hours, John actually laughed. A shaky, exhausted laugh, but real. The attic was quiet again. This time it was the kind of quiet he could live with. John would spend weeks replaying that night. The strange object in the roof, the restless hours of doubt, the growl that froze him in place. It wasn't just about luck. It was about caution, about listening to that inner voice when something feels wrong. Because sometimes, what looks like an insect nest might actually belong to a predator. And that's the kind of discovery that changes how you look at your own home forever.